Once upon a time, in a kingdom of rolling hills and sparkling rivers, there lived a young prince. He was clever and kind, the sort of prince who listened more than he spoke and remembered the names of the gardeners. Yet his heart wished for one thing only: to marry a true princess. "What is a true princess?" he once asked his mother, the queen. The queen's eyes shone like morning dew. "Not a crown, not jewels," she said, tapping his chest gently. "A true princess is measured here. Kindness, honesty, and above all, sensitivity, the tender courage to feel small things and care about them." The prince nodded, and the wish took root like a bright seed. When spring arrived, he set out to find her. He sailed across seas that glittered like liquid sapphires. He climbed mountains where the air was so thin, even eagles paused to catch their breath. He wandered through markets that dazzled with spices and silks and music that seemed to dance in the air. In every land, he met princesses. There was Princess Valyriia of the Eastern Isles, who owned more pearls than the ocean itself. She was very beautiful and wore gowns that whispered when she walked. The prince spoke gently of the fishermen in her coves, their nets torn by storms. "Poor things," he began, but before he could finish, Valyriia yawned, waved a hand, and said, "Do you have a larger mirror? The light in this one is dreadful." The prince bowed politely and rode on, his heart a little quieter. There was Princess Seraphina of the northern peaks, with hair as white as snow and eyes as bright as ice. She could recite poetry in 5 languages, duel with a sword, safely, of course, and play the harp so beautifully the candles leaned closer to listen. But whenever he tried to speak of hopes and fears, she smiled with a practiced smile and pulled her cape around her, as if her crown weighed heavier than her laughter. "You have many talents," the prince said. "And many duties," she answered, looking toward the mountains. He wished her well, but did not yet find what he sought. Then there was Princess Amara of the desert realms, who greeted him with laughter that rang like bells and eyes full of adventure. They raced swift camels under rosy skies, and the prince teased her, light as a feather. "You do love jewels," he said with a grin. Amara's smile cooled. "A princess must have only the finest," she replied, a bit too proudly. "Anything less is unworthy." The prince thanked her for the race and rode on, carrying not a bride, but a bundle of lessons about sparkle and sincerity. After nearly a year, he returned home with stories of mountains and seas, and a heart a little heavier than when he left. The people cheered his return and waved bright banners. Life soon found its usual rhythm. He trained with the knights, rode his horse through fields of clover, and listened to musicians in the great hall. Yet often he stood at the window, watching the horizon, as if it might answer him. The queen watched too, with quiet love. She did not press. She only made room beside her at the fire. So it was, on a stormy night, when rain drummed on the castle stones and the wind played the chimneys like flutes, that a knock sounded at the gate. The guards hesitated. Who would knock in weather like this? The knock came again, urgent but not wild. "Open," the queen said, wrapping her shawl tighter. "No one should be left outside in such a storm." The gates swung wide, and there in the rain stood a young woman. Her cloak was soaked, her shoes muddy, but her chin was lifted and her eyes steady. "I am a princess," she said. "Please, may I come in from the storm?" They brought her to the fire. Steam rose from her cloak like morning mist. "What is your name?" asked the queen. Princess Elara, she replied. I come from a distant land. My father's throne is threatened by a greedy cousin. To keep peace for our people, my parents sent me away in secret until things could be set right. On the road, bandits attacked our small escort. I escaped, but I lost everything. Everything except my name and my spirit. The storm led me here. The prince saw tiredness on her face, but not a trace of self-pity, only courage, humility, and a quiet strength. A princess, you say? The queen asked softly. Many claim such a title in times of trouble. How are we to know if it is true? Elara drew herself up, though a shiver passed through her from the rain. Whether you believe me or not, I cannot change who I am. I can only tell you the truth. The prince felt something warm kindle in his chest. The queen's eyes, too, brightened thoughtfully. That night she whispered to the servants and devised a test. Place a single pea on a bedstead, she instructed. Then stack 20 mattresses and 20 feather beds on top. The servants blinked. 20? 20, the queen said with a twinkle, and bring a ladder. Soon a bed rose toward the ceiling like a soft, snowy tower. When Elara saw it, she laughed in surprise. I have never climbed to bed before. Sleep well, my dear, said the queen. The prince hesitated at the door. Do you need anything? A book? Warm tea? 2 extra blankets? Elara smiled at him, a little uncertain, a lot grateful. I think I need only rest. She climbed the ladder, step by careful step, and tucked herself under quilts stitched with stars. But all night long she could not get comfortable. Something small pressed beneath her, like a whisper you cannot ignore. She turned. She fluffed pillows. She tried sleeping on her back, then her side. She thought perhaps she was imagining it. And then the tiny hardness nudged her again. It's like a pebble hiding in my boot, she murmured to herself, polite even in private. By dawn, her eyes held shadows, but her head was high. At breakfast, the queen poured tea. How did you sleep, my dear? Elara could have forced a smile. She could have said, fine, thank you, to seem easy and agreeable. Instead, she told the truth with gentle dignity. Terribly. I'm grateful for the bed, but there was something hard in it. I scarcely closed my eyes all night. The prince and the queen exchanged a knowing glance. The test had worked. For only someone with a spirit as delicate as a harp string, sensitive enough to notice a single pea beneath 20 mattresses and 20 feather beds, would feel such a small discomfort. Sensitivity, they knew, is not weakness. It is a way of hearing the quiet needs of the world. The prince felt his heart leap, not just because the test was passed, but because of Elara's honesty, kindness, and the courage to be exactly who she was. I owe you an apology, the prince said. We should have simply believed your word. Elara shook her head. You owed me safety, and you gave it. The rest is just a story we will tell someday. She smiled, and the room seemed to brighten. In the days that followed, they walked the gardens and fed the swans. They listened to musicians and shared stories by the fire. His of faraway markets and echoing peaks, hers of dusty roads and star-led travels. The prince learned that Elara remembered small things, where the windflowers grew best, the baker's shy apprentice's name, the way to mend a frightened child's courage with a game and a song. Elara learned that the prince could laugh at himself, that he listened to everyone, from shepherds to scholars, and that he believed fiercely that kindness is a kind of magic. The queen watched with joy that spilled over into humming. At last, the prince spoke to Elara beneath an arch of roses. "I searched over oceans and mountains," he said, "but what I was really looking for was what my mother taught me, a heart that feels truly. I believe I have found it. Will you stay? Not because of a title, but because you choose this life with me." Elara's eyes shone. "Yes," she said simply, "and I choose it with all I am." Messages were sent across distances. Elara's parents, safe at last and relieved to hear her voice on the page, sent their blessings. The greedy cousin, who had found power the size of a pea never fills a heart, made peace rather than trouble. As for the bandits, they discovered baskets of bread and work offered at the city gates. Sometimes a hand held out changes more than a sword ever could. The wedding bells rang so joyfully that the swans sang along. The streets bloomed with ribbons, bakers iced cakes the size of hay bales. Nobles and villagers danced in circles, spinning the day into evening, and the evening into a sky full of stars. As for the pea, it was placed in a tiny glass case in the royal treasury, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that small things matter, that true nobility is found not in crowns or riches, but in kindness, honesty, and the tender bravery of a sensitive heart. The Prince and Princess Elara made a habit of listening, especially to the quietest voices. They learned to notice the peas under the mattresses of their kingdom, the almost hidden troubles, so they could be eased. And whenever a storm blew in, the castle gates stayed open, warm light spilling out onto the rain. They lived gladly, and they lived well, and they loved one another, truly, ever after.